Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I think you are here because today we have a webinar to present the automation for end-to-end system refresh. This is going to discuss primarily how to simplify the complex automation to ensure that you have a streamlined process for doing system refresh in your landscape. This is the overall content we're going to cover today. Essentially, we'll run a 2-minute video introduction just to give you a background about IT-Conductor so that you're familiar with the platform is. And then from there, we will go into the most common problems with the system refresh. And we'll dive into the solution, how we tackle that challenge. And then in the end, we also tie in together how that fits into the overall operations management and application monitoring of the environment that we also use to refresh, right? So that will be the overall content. Again, we'll try to keep this interactive. You have questions throughout the process. Feel free to enter your question into the Q&A. We have a team online. Whatever we can address, we will do that. And then I can also share some of that content after, and we can follow up with you if needed after that. Okay, so we understand there's a variety of people on that either are customers or third-party vendors, consultants, or managed service providers. And so your context may be different, and hopefully what we'll demonstrate is the overall flexibility of the solution. Okay. All right, so let's look at the most common challenges in system refresh today. So before we get into here, as I said, I will start playing the video on an IT-Conductor background, but I will share that as a video pre-recorded, obviously. So let's take a couple minutes and we'll give you an overview.
IT-Conductor is a cloud-based application performance management and automation solution. Designed and developed to support the demands of digital transformation, IT-Conductor extends beyond a platform, offering solutions to monitor, manage, and orchestrate enterprise IT through intelligent automation. Managing applications involve monitoring the availability and performance of a wide variety of application domains, including its underlying infrastructure, from databases, servers, network, and storage resources. It is often costly and time-consuming, not to mention the effort and resources required to set up silos of tools that create disparate systems and a lack of cohesion among functional areas of the business. This is exactly why we developed a massively parallel processing engine to manage distributed systems more efficiently and make it simpler for IT teams to perform their tasks. A simple, yet powerful platform that lets you manage systems almost instantly through a secure gateway connection. Get a better understanding of your entire system landscape from a single pane of glass. Increase visibility into system performance with advanced observability features. Perform root cause analysis using time-synchronized troubleshooting. Manage alerts using policy-based exceptions. Leverage the integrated and highly configurable dashboards to show only what is meaningful to you, effectively minimizing noise and maximizing the performance of your systems. Utilize the capability of the platform to automatically run reports on schedule. Manage batch jobs and monitor execution logs. Automate processes using the platform's built-in process composer and leverage existing automation templates. Design, build, and deploy solutions at cloud speed. At IT-Conductor, we are always looking to the future and helping you accelerate your journey towards cloud transformation. We help organizations move to the cloud simpler and faster by providing the orchestration design and deploy engine to enable end-to-end cloud migrations. Stop guessing and start managing. With our remote and agentless management platform delivered as a service, you get exactly what you pay for. As a company, we value your trust. And for that, we commit ourselves to continuously innovate and strive to make our platform more accessible, improving overall user experience. Do you want to learn more? Feel free to reach out to us. We would love to hear from you.
All right, So that's the background on IT-Conductor over all platform, and I am again IT-Conductor's co-founder and CEO, Linh Nguyen. So obviously, everybody who does system refresh understand and know that it is a complex, one of the most complex activity to do in SAP environment, and because you don't do it often, the manual procedure require a lot of effort and attention, and especially with the skill to do the refresh. And with the large growing landscape today, many systems need to be refreshed at the same time, not just one at a time. And so with the interrelationship between systems, that becomes a strain on how many system refresh you can do and how many people need to be on board to do that kind of refresh to get them all in sync. There's also, of course, downtime risk, because if you are taking production to do the refresh in QA, depending on what you're using, technologies you are managing, you may encounter downtime in production, or even the QA where the test team may not have access to the system for QA work, or developers in sandbox, etc. So there's potential loss in time. And then, of course, when you're doing the refresh, there's not just the database copy and general refresh, but there's a lot of items to ensure you reconfigure in your QA environment that may or may not be taken care of if you're doing it manually, and you can have inconsistent result if that's not taken care of from the perspective of completeness. Okay. So at this point, let's do a quick poll. I think we can have our folks on the webinar here throw up a poll for us to just get a gauge of how often you do the refresh. Okay. We'll give folks about 30 seconds, and then we can review some of that together. Okay, so I think we have, the quarterly results. If you see the poll results, let me just share. There's 89% mentioned they do it quarterly. So depending on how many systems you have, obviously that can be quite strenuous on the team in terms of total time and effort to do that. And I'm pretty sure the project team does have some regular requests to do that. So let's take a look at what we see with our customer base and in the general SAP ecosystem, what happens. So companies run quarterly, right? So 60%. So I think we have folks on the call here indicate about 80-something%. Every quarter they're doing it, and then the quarter of them actually do technical issues encountered when they do it manually afterwards. So examples of that may include, maybe I forgot an RFC connection, maybe I forgot to override some particular configuration that talk to other systems, or maybe I forgot to put in S-Trust certificates. Maybe the system is not secure, etc., etc. So there are something that after you turn over to the QA team, you might find there might be issues. Some of them can be easily fixed. Some of them might cause other problems. If you have active data connections to production landscape, that might be a more dramatic finding that you have to fix. Most of the customers today have environment that's fairly complex. And what we see when customers tell us how they do system refresh today, can be up to 100 steps in doing a single system copy and refresh. So that's quite a lot of steps. So this includes everything from preparation phase, making sure your system has sufficient resources in the QA, making sure you save the proper configuration. I've seen lots of people having manual snapshot of screenshot documents of maybe the configuration for the operation mode to profiles, etc., etc. So that's quite strenuous. And then the lapse time that typically is wasted, we see in the refresh, is even if you get everything done from database, storage, basis, and then the application verification afterwards, there's quite a bit of time wasted waiting for cross-team, because typically if you're doing a refresh manually, you might have the infrastructure team doing the actual OS side of things, maybe provisioning systems or configuring additional storage. and then handing that over to the database team to do a copy of the database. Maybe storage team has to clone or snapshots to the basis team. So there's a lot of waiting around, not just continuous work. And then typically we see also a lot of customers today, when they do the manual method, it can take 7 days or more to do a system refresh. So here's another poll just to get an indication from you folks. What is a typical duration that it takes for you to do a system refresh? So we can throw up a poll here. So I think at this time I've got 7, 8, 9 responses. Let's see what we have the most. So this is the cross section, right? I think we have some that are less than a week. Some are less than 2 days. So less than 2 days is ideal. Obviously, that's the shortest time frame. So we want to make sure that the system is done typically 2 days, because normally a system refresh is conducted during the weekend, right? So part of our experience is that if you're doing the refresh, your basis team or your team is actually spending that entire weekend doing refresh. So which obviously is not ideal, right? If you're doing it manual, it can be quite an effort to do that, right? So I think that's one of the takeaways, that we want to make sure we help automate all of this in order to reduce the time and cost. So this is the main benefits that we talk about for the system refresh, is reducing time and cost. Time, as you noted in the beginning of the presentation, and even in my background there is a little bunch of clocks there. This is the number one complaint. It takes too much time, so I want to reduce the time. Time could be in both elapsed time as well as the actual effort, right? So if you have 5 people, 10 people working on it, elapsed time might be 2 days, but that's 10 people over the course of 40 to 48 hours. And some of them, as I said, are not continuous. There might wait times that increase the end-to-end duration. So the benefit of automation is obviously to do orchestration, and orchestration is driven from the fact that there is no two customers that run SAP the same way. They may have similar, but they may have different technologies, different components, different databases, different SAP versions, and different components in SAP itself. Could be S4, could be CRM, BW. And so we take into account that we can automate most of these when we have a pattern. So these architectural patterns can be customized to meet your particular system refresh need, right? And of course, minimizing downtime is a top priority. So our typical SAP production kind of Fortune 1000 customers, if they have an hour of downtime, it equates to about $4 million in lost revenue. So obviously this is not production downtime, but it could be translated to something similar in your QA. So if you have a QA team of 20 people, or maybe a project team waiting for an N+1 upgrade landscape to work on, and maybe you have a third-party partner integrator that's waiting for a system, that's also the downtime that is translated to loss productivity and costs, right? And then obviously after you do the system refresh, it's not just to hand over the system. What about post-processing? If there are client copies required by the test team to work in, maybe there are transports delta that were in the QA that didn't go to production, needs to get put back in there. So what about things that are, BDOS, which is changing logical systems? Those things might also require manual intervention and running them and tracking them and waiting for them to complete before you would call the whole end-to-end process complete. So this we can also automate as well. Okay. So here's the answer to the challenge, right? So we minimize the dependency between scarce resource. So SAP technical resource are fairly scarce, and we want to make sure that if we're doing refreshes often, that we utilize automation to minimize the interaction between different people that may not be available. So that process in digitizing the knowledge and your runbook into a orchestration platform helps you to manage the workflow intelligently and increase the efficiency, right? And then the flexibility to run the system refresh. Obviously, if you have multiple, which most customers have a mix of, let's say, database platforms, maybe HANA, maybe Oracle, maybe SQL Server, maybe all of them, MaxDB, etc., etc. Some Linux, some Windows, again, some on-prem, some in cloud. The flexibility to run refresh needs to be able to adapt to that environment, right? So it's not one size fit all. And then after you do the refresh, if you are going to hand over for the end users to start using, whether it's the QA team or developers, you need to be able to see what was done, because customers can come back and say, hey, how come I'm missing this technical configuration that was then QA before? The auditable trace allows us to obviously go back and see, all right, what did I use to refresh? What database copy did I use? What configuration did I save? And what did I import it back in, right? So all of that is important. So here's another question, just curious, because obviously some of us work as third-party consultants, some work for system integrators, some work for customers directly. So there's obviously a lot of third-party folks that manage systems on behalf of the customer. If you are one of those, I'm assuming that would help scale the team. Right? Okay, so looks like the most of folks are leveraging their own team to do the work, which is good. That means you contain and you have most of the knowledge to manage the operation and the process of it. So what we do find is that there's a lots of large entity do use third party, and they need to be, even though they may be experienced in doing system refresh, but it may be at other sites, they need to be trained in the customer environment. They need to be acclimated to the specifics of the environment for the customer that they're working on. So not all sites are equal, and the processes can vary greatly, right? So this is an important thing to realize, is that if you have a customer and you're a managed service provider or you are doing it yourself, how does that knowledge translate into new recruits, new people that on board to leverage the digitized knowledge to run a refresh the next time, right? So that's important. Okay, so that's interesting feedback for us. So let's go into the solution. What does the solution look like? How do we help manage the end-to-end process to minimize all of those pain points that you may have encountered? So I myself been working with SAP since 27, 28 years ago. So this is a pain point we deal with, on a day-to-day basis with customers and our systems. So to come up with a solution, we had to design an end-to-end workflow automation that can take what you have in a somewhat maybe written down set of steps on a spreadsheet or a runbook, and digitize that so that we can have a workflow that can track the activities that may happen across multiple systems and multiple layers, applications, database, OS, etc. And what we do find is normally off-the-shelf solutions like SAP's Llama, they are very rigid. They don't fit well into multiple customer environments. They require a lot of effort to learn and to customize and then use that, and then every little change require you to go back to some maybe a solution manager or Llama expert, etc., etc. We in turn deliver a customized service, always on, 24/7. That automation as a service means that we can adapt to your environment to change your requests and help you configure that to work exactly the way you want for your end-to-end process. Okay? So that's the main difference, is not only that we can provide the platform to do that, we are here an extension of your team to help you deliver that particular service. So how it works, and I will step through this fairly quickly, and then I actually have live environment that I can show you in detail. But let's give you an overview on how all of this works. So automation as a service, really we can set up the configuration of the workflow. So out of the box, we can take what we have, we can clone it for your particular environment, and then we can customize the differences where you might have a particular database, a different technology, for storage or your OS, or maybe you're in Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud, or on-prem, and your storage vendor works differently. You have different scripts you might want to run. Whatever you're doing today, 80% of you saying you manage your own system refresh, you have specifics that you would want us to incorporate into. So as I said, not one size fit all, and it's run as a project to set up your initial refresh. And so you could have this refresh configuration, the same kind of flow, right? Whatever happens, what happens behind the scene in these are the specific detail about how it fits into your technology stack, but the process is similar. So that means we have a start, we can then prep the source system, right? So whatever the production copy is coming from, whether it's a backup, whether it's an online thing, whether we need to take an on-demand backup, then we can target, prep a target. So the target being a QA or sandbox or whatever you are going to refresh, like an N+1 environment for upgrade, that needs to be prepped, meaning that you need to take it down, you need to export configuration, right? And then you would do your database restore, right? All refreshes involve obviously taking data from the source and writing to the target system. And after you restore that, now you have a copy of production, but you need to put the configuration back to look like QA system or sandbox system, whatever you are refreshing. So this post-copy automation, you might be used to the term PCA, right? So that is the post-copy automation. So that's an end-to-end process that looks similar to most people's runbook, but behind the scene. In our overview, just to get an idea, what happens is you have production environment, and let's say it's HANA, okay, it could be anything, Oracle, whatever. And you have sandbox, but it could be QA or it could be a project landscape used for upgrade testing, right? So whatever it is, we're going to export that configuration out, right? And then we're going to automate the refresh. So we take the database copy, we overlay that, and then we import back the content. So all of that can be taken care of end to end. And then following this process, we also have the ability to obviously do the post copy, meaning any client copies or transports or anything else you want to run. And every customer will be different in terms of that, but we can help orchestrate that for you. Okay, so that's kind of the overall process flow and the environment we typically deal with. So at this point in time, there is a demo that we can go through to show you how that works end to end. I will just step over some screenshots first, and then I'll dive into the actual workflow itself. So as you see before, we do have the actual high-level steps, right, before. If you can see here, the source prep. So let's say I'm taking a backup of the source system, right? After we take the backup of the source system that we're going to use for refreshing the target, we go through and obviously bring down the target application, stop SAP. We actually configure a specific profile of what we call the system refresh configuration. So we can export, let's say for QA, you want to export out most of the basis config stuff like op mod, profiles, licenses, those type of things can be saved off. Once we saved off that, we can then take the database that you took from the backup of the source system. We then automatically restore that into your QA or your sandbox target. After the database is restored, right, then we can do the post config. So post config is importing back again that configuration that we took from QA. Now we import it back, and all of this has happened while the SAP application is down. All right, so that means you're safe. You're not starting up application and potentially have production connections and things like that that could fire off. After the configuration is imported back in, this for all intended purposes, the technical information, the configuration looks like QA now. We start up the application. So once we do that, the system then can go through whatever else that we do. So in detail, the configuration that we support can be many packages. As you can see, you have the ability to pick, and we actually have, I guess, predefined packages. So let's say for BW, CRM, ECC, SRM, whatever the product that you are refreshing, you may have different things that you want to refresh and then put it back. Not everything is the same across all your different SAP solution stack. So we have ability to specify what packages, and these packages would then get exported, saved, and then imported back in, right? So that's done through our automation class for the system refresh automation config, okay? And then we have the logs. As soon as you import or export, everything gets essentially provided through our online ability to look into logs. I can go into that live a little bit later on. So you have a detail for a step to run, for instance, the post-processing can run afterwards. So this can be a single end-to-end, or we can be two different workflows. And then the second workflow might be post-processing. So every customer, as I said, may have different process for the workflow afterwards. So in this case, for the demo, we do things like BDOS, automatically schedule that to run, right? And we'll make sure the logs are there, all the execution are there. We could do things like client copies, for instance. We can even automatically client copy, run that job against the system, so you have the client copy. So maybe you do have the client information you exported previously that needs to be imported back in. Whatever it is, that's the customized set of post copy automation that we can integrate into your environment. Okay, so at this point, maybe we'll throw up another poll before I go into some more detail into the live tool itself. Okay, so not a lot of folks use tools, which is, I guess, Go client script company internal tool. Okay, good. Good to know. Well, I guess wherever you are starting this journey, whether from scripts or from some other products, we definitely want to highlight the key differentiator and how you can benefit from this tool. So at this point, I will actually step into a little bit more live section. And so I will show you around a little more on the actual workflow and how it works as well, right? So what we normally do in a system copy in IT-Conductor, and I will increase the font so that it makes it easier to see, hopefully. So IT-Conductor has dashboards, and we have your environment all monitored in real time. So what we do have is, for instance, let's say you're on AWS, and I'm just going to, arbitrarily pick something. So typically customers have environment, whatever the SAP systems they may have. We have custom dashboards that can visualize the systems, the health, as well as any automation. So in this case, we actually have one that we conducted a recent SAP migration automation to AWS. But in essence, a particular customer may have a need for doing refresh across, let's say, ECC, maybe CRM, maybe BW. That's very common trio that we see. So you have a dashboard where you have the process definition. So for instance, what I showed you previously, you have a process definition. This is a definition similar to what the presentation said, the major step here. This definition can be run at will by associating what we call a configuration, right? So we have a what you run on. Maybe you have 3 ECC. You have a customer with 3 ECC landscape. You only need one definition. That's the automation process flow. What you do is you associate the actual running config, right? So what is my slot system? This is what we call execution config. It's a form that you fill out, you save that, and you're going to use that every single time. Let's say this is for S4, and for S4, you need to go from, let's say the source is production, the target is QA. Where am I going to put in my file storage for storing my backups from production? And then I'm also going to use configuration. What template am I going to use, right? So you can configure, as I said before, you can configure what packages you want to save, and then from that point you can use it over and over again. And then you have other things that is used in importing, exporting those configuration for. We use R3 load so that we are SAP compliant. All right, you can even specify the concurrency number of R3 load jobs to run. Okay, so that's what we call execution config. So the execution config together with a process definition, and you can schedule this, right? So we have schedule, you can automatically, let's say 5 p.m. on a Friday, I want to start my refresh, right? You can schedule ahead of time, or you can launch it. And when you launch it, you instantiate this definition. So for instance, over here, you have the actual instances. You see the start time and end time. We just did one recently to prepare for the demo. So this is actually fresh here. You can go into the process. So when it's running, this will get updated live. So the state changes here. Before they were purple because they are just process definition. Here they are instances of the actual refresh, right? So let me just make sure I go back to the dashboard. Here we are. So the source prep, very easy. This one, as I said before, is just a simple export of the database, meaning that I have a database backup that I'm going to use, right? So I can go into the step. The step can be many other activities inside. In this case, it's just a simple backup. So we actually run, okay, when we want to run this backup, we're going to back up the database, right? The database is online in production. I just backed up the database. All of that is dynamically substituted where I'm going to put the database backup, etc. And I'm going to prep the target. So what happens in prepping the target, right? I'm going to stop SAP, right? And then that's automatically orchestrated by us. And we bring down the SAP application server on your QA environment. And then we go and export the QA config. So again, exporting the QA config is that we actually have all the different technical configuration in your QA that we're going to save. In this particular case, for demo purposes, we've pre-selected and saved a configuration. I'm going to save things like my inbox, my SCOT, my STMS for my transport, my SAP profile, op mods, whatever it is that you do, that's saved in the config. And then once you do that, you actually have the process that runs and export all in parallel. As I said before, there were like 5 parallel jobs. They will all run because if you can look at dependency here, all of them are not connected. That means they can run in parallel. You can also see when they exported, what was the configuration export look like. The execution log is here. Precisely, you get the R3 R3 trans log. So every table that is part of that package gets exported. You have a detail log that you can use as reference to go back and compare. Again, so once you have exported the target system, now that target system gets overlaid by the database restore. Again, whatever the database you have, it's a similar process, right? So obviously, so we stop in this case, as for HANA, we stop the tenant. As you know, you can be multi-tenant, you can have multiple tenants on a single system. In this case, we stop the tenant database so we can do the actual database restore. Again, all of this is activities that you can see that we restore the database. You can see that there are here logs that the database was stopped, and then after that we restore the database. So this can take whatever duration of time. We provide the logs and instances of all of that information there. If you go into it, even the process of restoring can be customized for you. It's a simple, in this case, we're using SQL to do the restore activity. We have direct agentless access to the database to control and manage it. So after we do the database restore, of course, the next step is going to do the post copy, right? So post copy means we are going to run a bunch of post copy process to do. So the QA config gets imported back. As you can see here, we go in and you see similarly all the packages we exported previously to save the technical config in QA gets restored back into it. So production data now will have a technical QA config, right? Again, that's a reverse process of the export. Whatever we exported, we re-import. We automatically start up SAP, right? And then we can even automatically kick off a backup of the new system. So now we have production data with a technical QA config. We can run a backup. After the backup completes, we run the post-processing. So again, all of these boxes indicate that we can now run things like, for instance, put jobs on hold. We're going to run the configuration for the client copies. We can do the BDOS, all of this stuff. You can see there are job logs that run. So these are detailed SAP job logs that run throughout the process of BDOS. And again, we have customers that run BDOS in parallel, many parallel jobs. If it's a large system, it will speed up the process. So they can be kicked off with different variants. And you can see the step itself is a definition of a job that can run in SAP with particular variants. So for instance, you might have predefined variants you want to run, 10 variants for 10 jobs. We can kick all those jobs off and monitor their completion all at the same time. All right, so after that, we can do things like, of course, as I said, client copy as well. Again, here's the run as a job. And you have the job log. Things ran successfully, end to end, without anybody touching it. At the end, we unlock the system, all right? And we are now completed the post copy, right? So now the whole system itself is up and running and looks like QA with whatever post processing that you need to call that process successful, okay? So that's kind of the overall product, how we design it, how we orchestrate it. We automate, we can do schedule, or we can do automation based on your particular needs. But any of these steps, if it fails, you can actually go in there and rerun it, right? So the whole IT-Conductor is on the premise that you have complete control. So if, let's say, an R3 trans process fail because of whatever, maybe you run out of space, you can restart that step only, and then you can also override if you think you've done it manually outside of the workflow. You can also say, yes, I've done it, and I can continue with the process. So all of this allows us to do manual control or override and monitor of this. And again, this workflow can be monitored through here. So all of this goes back to, here's your dashboard, a single place where you can have all of your refresh in one place, all the definitions of different landscape like ECC, BW, CRM, S4, whatever, all the different configs that you can override, and then that together is used in the actual instance when you schedule or run it on demand, okay? So this is the overall process of doing that. And then I will go at this point in time, if there's any questions, I can take some questions. If not, I can continue with the overall kind of platform per se. Any questions? If you do, just feel free to enter in Q&A or put up your hand. We can unmute you, okay? All right, so if there's no questions, I will continue in our presentation and talk a little bit about System Refresh being a cross-platform solution. Touches on a bunch of things. As you've seen already, we can monitor whatever it is, the system state, the health state, activities, and all the KPIs you want in terms of performance, right? And we can notify. So throughout the system refresh, our notification can let you know if a stage finished completely or has failed, and you can take a look at it through the logs and restart them if needed. And then automation, if it allows us obviously to rerun the same thing over and over again. So if you find out that there are some issues with something and you forgot to include a package, right? Typically today, if you're doing that manually, you'd have to start again from scratch and go through the process again. For us, it's as simple as restarting that workflow, create a new instance, change whatever definition you want in terms of packages, and rerun that. And then really from that perspective, you have overall dashboard to look at the system health state at any time, and including the run times of any process. So out of the box, we actually work with a lot of solutions for customers, typically ERP, BW, SRM, CRM, even Solman, S4. Most ABAP types require the refresh of configuration. Java, there's not much to do in there, so we don't do that. Typically in Java, there's a few config tool things to do afterwards, maybe like certificates and obviously connection. That's about it. But primarily the solution today is supported similarly with SAP Llama. We do ABAP based. Okay. So this time I will ask a quick poll again regarding what type of database you commonly work with most in your environment that you have to refresh, just to give us an indication. I remember doing some poll like this early on a couple of years ago. It was a lot more Oracle. Now you can see more HANA. Used to be SQL and Oracle were a lot of common platform. So I guess HANA kind of is now taken over as one of the most popular database platform that folks have to do refresh on, right? So that's good to know. Oracle is still there, and I think there's some SQL Server. So we do have SQL Server customers that you know, will often do refreshes and then need to either they already do it through scripts and they just need help on the PCA side of the technical config. But whatever it is, we can handle those requests as well. And interesting, there's not a lot of Sybase customer, right? Maybe Oracle will go to Sybase. That's another topic we have with migration as well. But so thank you for that. And then let me step back here. And I guess at this point, just to get a gauge before we go into some questions and answers and maybe dive a little bit deeper on our integrated platform, tell us, you know, today when you do the system refresh, is your procedure, you know, I would say rock solid? Do you encounter issues? How often you do it? I guess if the more often you do it, you feel more confident about it, right? So far, we got a 3.2 out of 5. That's about 2/3, I guess. All right, remember, if you're responsible for delivering a working system, this is your level of confidence in the time that you need to deliver it in and the level or the quality of the system that actually you deliver, right, and support. So, so let's try and get folks up above the 4 out of 5 level. Gonna be 80% not confident. So if you had automation, we certainly like to think that from our customer experience, that number is much higher because they encounter a lot less problem. And when they encounter it, it's more minor things. Though the major things are taken care of for them, but just the minor things that they have to worry about. So that's a typical thing there. Okay, so that is the poll. So let me see if we can go to some general FAQ. We can talk about some of the areas that, and we do have this in detail, that we have an FAQ page on. We can share that as well. But essentially, we already talked about what ABAP systems can we support, right? So system refresh is really a process of refreshing database, but then restoring the config so that we can continue doing testing work. Again, we do all the common SAP stack. I would say 80% of the customers have the stack we already support. What kind of config tables can be export, import? As I said before, we can handle any level of config in the SAP module itself, whether it be licenses, whether it's you know, AOE configuration, whether it's in particular CRM or BW specific packages that can also be there. We can also help with basis cleanup. So for instance, you refresh a database and a lot of things in production you don't want, like spool, a lot of the temporary spool entries in the database you want to clean up. We can help that, or maybe you want to clean up all iDocs or logs or job logs or something like that. That can also be supported as well. And a lot of those export import process, again, we can support both Linux and Windows environment. Since we use a platform independent solution, we can work with you whether you're on-prem on one platform or another, whatever database you may have. Okay, and then also some of the runtime during the refresh. You know, if their system is resource constrained, maybe you don't have enough CPU, maybe you don't have enough storage, whatever, we can actually monitor that as part of IT-Conductor platform. All right, and then also after that, we provide the detail logs, right? So how do we different from IT-Conductor to say Llama? That's the most common customer question when they're not used to a third party. SAP Llama is a licensed product that you need to run, create a new environment, install, just like Solution Manager. You have Llama, then you need to import all of those packages and solution into your production system. Unlike us, we don't need anything in your production system, right? They actually need all of the blueprint stuff they call for what packages that go into production, so that when you refresh production QA, the reason is they do it inside ABAP, meaning that when you complete the refresh, you actually have to bring up SAP in QA even before it's been cleaned. You are exposed to potentially have network traffic going out because you need to bring up SAP in order to run the post-copy automation in Llama itself. And Llama does not automate your end-to-end, your database refresh, your whatever. You would have to do that in Llama if you want to configure specific for your technical infrastructure. There are APIs and adapters, but we've had customers encounter a lot of issues when they try to connect the end-to-end piece to it. From a provisioning standpoint, whereas IT-Conductor is built-in native, we can actually orchestrate many of that. Okay, so those are some common. I'm sure there's a lot more questions. If you have, we are here to answer any of the questions you may have. So at this point in time, I will show you the rest of the platform just quick because we do have some time and doesn't look like there's anybody with hands up for questions or QA. Let me share a little bit on, so I show you already kind of our dashboard if you want to look at your instances. We also have the systems that we have. You saw during the demo, your production and your QA systems. We have in-depth monitoring of them so that we can not only monitor, but then we manage by orchestrating task activities. All of this information is available during the run, after the run. So as soon as you turn over systems, the system's health is part of the end-to-end solution, right? In order to orchestrate, we need to first be able to monitor and have the in-depth information about systems. So just an example, if you have SAP, one of the systems, we actually show you overview dashboards of, let's say, your S/4HANA environment. This gives you the one glimpse health into your systems, all of the application performance, end-to-end response time, performance of your underlying OS, all of that is there. All of your service utilization, process utilization, queues, all that is there as well. And this is a single place where you can additionally go in further and troubleshoot or dive into other areas. So you have multiple app servers, you may have background jobs. Those are navigatable by our dashboard overview of an SAP system. So let's say you want to go into the database. Database itself also has dashboard. So this dashboard is the overview of the HANA database. Again, you have the HANA instances. You may have different services depending on what HANA is configured to do. Maybe you have replication, etc. All of that is there. Maybe you have multiple hosts in a cluster that's automatically controlled, managed by us as part of the automation and also management. And the overall HANA health as part of memory management, CPU. If you have any high priority HANA alerts also come up here. Your overall HANA system availability, as well as other things that maybe for backups, your data, your log file volumes, and all the different other areas relating to performance. If there's bottlenecks in your system, you will be able to get it here, including things like server threads, waiting jobs, I/O wait, etc., as well as your I/O performance, right? So this is just a quick dashboard, but you can really get into detail about all your environment as far as even replication. If you have clusters, how replication's doing, health of your inter and intra relationship with the other system components. right? Or backups that you need to track to make sure backups are running on regular basis. We actually have policy trigger backups. So if a certain hours elapsed, we will automatically kick off the backups. So it's a backup on demand as per se. So at this point, I want to kind of wrap up the presentation. We've kind of covered the system refresh, the benefits of doing automated system refresh. And from that perspective, I thank you for your time. If you're interested in doing a system refresh project automation, we would love to have you as a trial customer. So we actually have a special offer for people attending this to reach out to us. We can have a free one-on-one consulting engagement to ensure that we know, understand your environment, and we can provide the solution for you from a trial perspective, free of charge. And then when you actually take on our solution as part of a special offer today, we will offer you a discounted service for the subscription of our end-to-end system refresh as a service. We offer 20% for the folks attending the webinar today. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to leave the Q&A open. If anybody wants to ask interactive questions, certainly it's the time to do it now. And again, we will provide the recording and the results as well. So here's our contact information, and feel free to reach out to us anytime. So again, I taken up almost the hour. I have 3 minutes left. If you have any Q&A, feel free to raise your hands if you have any questions or typing into the Q&A section.
Then we have
Yes.
one question from AKG. Can you share the benefits and TCO?
Certainly, yes. So on our website, we may have already from other customers that have indicated their use of the solution. So let me just so you can navigate to. So on our IT-Conductor side, we have system refresh as a service. And here are some of the comparisons. So for instance, we have 80% automation, as I mentioned during the presentation, right? So think about that TCO, how much time, if you answered before that it takes you 2 days and how many people involved per system, think about the time saving when you don't have to actually do it manually at all, just launch and then get alerted, or you can track the dashboards, right? So those are time savings, custom orchestration. So some of these will eventually equate to the lower costs of running a refresh from a human perspective. Some other thing regarding the error handling, obviously, if you are doing it manually, there may be configurations that you think you've done, but I've seen too many times the customers may not have addressed a certain thing and they actually end up with missing configuration that cause them to redo the refresh, right? So some of that are intangible ones. We do have customers who run, I think in our, if you look at some of the system refresh, we actually have some, I believe, let me just look at success stories. There's a measurement in our IT-Conductor as part of the saving from, I believe under here, we have customer stories. I think Medtronic is one here that you can also glean into. They do system refresh end-to-end. They're actually on an Oracle environment. And we have a quote somewhere that addresses the savings in their system refresh automation. I believe here's where they're doing their automation system refresh. There's a quote from them as well. So hard tangible ROIs will come from specific to your environment. But I say in general, we automate 80% of tasks you do. So if it's 100 tasks today, a task could be something like I'm going to restore or reconfigure my log-on load balancing, or I reconfigure my profiles or something like that. You know, all of those tasks add up to some time, and we can orchestrate all of those so that you don't need to worry about that anymore, right? We do have some differences in how this is our open docs wiki, where we contain also the system refresh service, automation as a service. We actually have some documentation here. You're welcome to visit. So this is in docs.itconductor.com. And we detail out more benefits of our solution there. And as part of this, you can see similar to what we presented. But as part of that, some of our customers use the standalone PCA portion only. And that's also available here. So you can get overview of how this works. This only takes care of the config, not the end-to-end refresh. And there are clearly also folks here, customers that use it, provide feedback when they do a lot of refreshes on a regular basis. Okay. Great. Well, I thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out if you have questions. We'll share the video recording once it's available, and we will be in touch. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team. Again, it's info@itconductor.com or support@itconductor.com, or you can reach out to me directly as well. It's lin.nguyen@itconductor.com. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate everybody, and have a great weekend.